Welcome back. Welcome to the IS IT governance course. This is the third module. In this module, we will continue to evaluate IT investments. In this module, I have two main goals: evaluate a portfolio of IT investments and IT chargeback. So this lesson will focus on evaluating a portfolio of IT investments. In this lesson, I have three videos. The first video will define the IT investment portfolio. The second video will describe the characteristics of different IT asset classes. And the third video will focus on the strategic orientation and IT investment portfolio management. So let's start with the definition of IT investment portfolio. The main idea is that any large company will not do just one IT project in a given year. They will do a collection of IT projects in a given year. So IT portfolio management is about selecting the right set of IT projects that are aligned with the organization's strategy and improve returns on IT investments. That is, we want to not only do projects right, but select and do the right projects. Flawless project execution is meaningless if the right projects are not being tackled. So here there is a difference between project management and portfolio management. Project management ensures that projects are done right, whereas portfolio management ensures that right projects are done. So in portfolio management, we take a unified view of all the IT projects together. That is, we look at all the projects in unison. The IT investment portfolio consists of four elements: firm-wide infrastructure, transactional systems, informational systems, and strategic systems. I'm going to illustrate each of these elements using examples from the airline industry. Firm-wide infrastructure. Firm-wide infrastructure is the foundation of network, computing, and database services on which IT applications run. The goal of firm-wide infrastructure is integration, that is, allow different applications to be integrated. Flexibility, that is, provide the flexibility so that applications can be developed and implemented faster. And finally, reduced IT costs through standardization of different elements of the infrastructure. Transactional systems. Transactional systems process basic business transactions cost effectively. So for an airline, reservations, ticketing, checking in, aircraft and crew scheduling, and aircraft maintenance, these are transactions that happen repeatedly, and an airline may perform infinite number of these transactions. So the goal of transactional systems is to process basic transactions cost effectively, that is, reduce costs through increased throughput. Informational systems provide aggregated information, that is, information aggregated from transactional systems to monitor and control the performance of the organization. For example, for an airline, applications that identify which routes have high occupancy and need more flights versus which routes have low occupancy and need fewer flights is an example of an informational system. So the goal of informational system is better information, increased control, and improved quality. Finally, strategic systems are applications that provide a competitive advantage. They either provide a competitive advantage or they reduce a competitive disadvantage. For an airline, applications to identify valuable customers so that they can be provided with differentiated service to improve their loyalty is an example of strategic systems. So the goal of strategic systems is to increase sales, improve competitive advantage, or reduce competitive disadvantage, that is, improve the market positioning of the firm. So to summarize, the IT investment portfolio consists of four elements that have different goals. Thank you. Welcome back. In this lesson, we set ourselves three goals: define IT investment portfolio, characteristics of different IT asset classes, and finally, strategic orientation and portfolio management. The goal of this video is to discuss the characteristics of different IT asset classes. Here I'm going to use a study by Aral and Weil to discuss the characteristics of the IT investment portfolio. In this study, they asked the question, why do two firms with the same IT capital perform differently? The answer they suggest is that it is likely that they are investing in different types of technology with different goals. This study uses data from 147 large publicly traded US firms. The data comes from the period 1999 to 2002. In this study, the authors examined the relationship between intensity of each class of IT asset and 4 measures of performance: profitability measured as return on assets, market valuation measured as Tobin's Q. Tobin's Q is market value of the firm divided by the total assets of the firm. The third measure of performance is operational performance measured as net margin and cost of goods sold. And finally, innovation measured as sales from new and modified products. So let's look at each of these 4 IT asset classes. Firm-wide infrastructure. They make the argument that firm-wide infrastructure is investments made in anticipation of future business needs. They expect firm-wide infrastructure to be associated with short-term costs, lower short-term profitability, and higher profitability and performance in the long run. So they expect firm-wide infrastructure to cost in the short term but pay off in the long run. What they find is that firm-wide infrastructure investments made in 2001 are negatively associated with return on assets in 2001 and net margin in 2001 and 2002. That is, firm-wide infrastructure reduces profitability in the short run. They also find that firm-wide infrastructure disrupts short-term efforts at product innovation as measured as revenue from modified products in 2001. That is, firm-wide infrastructure causes some disruption that affects innovation in the short term. However, they find that firm-wide infrastructure investments are positively related with Tobin's Q. That is, firm-wide infrastructure is an investment that is rewarded by the market. So in some sense, firm-wide infrastructure has a long-term payoff. Transactional systems. They make the argument that transactional systems reduce the cost of performing day-to-day repetitive transactions. So they expect transactional systems to reduce the cost of performing day-to-day activities. They find that transactional systems are associated with lower cost of goods sold for the firm, but not with more innovation. So they find that transactional systems reduce the cost of goods sold, but do not improve innovation. So they reduce costs, but they do not improve innovation. Informational systems. They make the argument that informational systems tighten reporting and control functions to reduce costs, and they help identify new opportunities for revenue generation. So by reducing costs and improving revenues, informational systems should improve profitability. They find that informational systems are positively related with return on assets and net margin in 2001 and 2002. So they do find that informational systems improve profitability right away. Finally, strategic systems. They make the argument that strategic systems are investments that are made to engender innovation. They do find that strategic systems are associated with revenue from modified products, but not lower costs. So strategic systems improve innovation, but they do not lower costs. In some sense, they find that strategic systems are like R&D investments. On the whole, this study suggests that firms make different kinds of IT investments that have different payoffs. Thank you. Welcome back. In this lesson, we set ourselves 3 goals: definition of IT investment portfolio, characteristics of different IT asset classes, and finally strategic orientation and portfolio management. This video will focus on strategic orientation and portfolio management. Weil and Broadbent studied a large number of firms across different industries and came up with this characterization of what is an average IT investment portfolio look like. Their study found that on average, firms spend about 58% of the IT dollars on infrastructure, 12% on transactional systems, 16% on informational systems, and 14% on strategic systems. So this is what the average IT investment portfolio looks like. So now we will focus on how the portfolio, IT investment portfolio of a cost-focused firm or an agility-focused firm or a firm that is trying to balance between cost and agility differ from the portfolio of an average firm. So compared to the average firm, how does the portfolio of a cost-focused firm differ? The first point is that on average, a cost-focused firm spends 10 to 20% lower than the industry average. So the cost-focused firm has an investment that is 10 to 10% lower than the average firm in the industry. Now let's look at the individual elements of the IT investment portfolio. Compared to the average firm, which spends 58% on infrastructure, a cost-focused firm spends 42% on infrastructure. Compared to the average firm that spends 12% on transactional systems, a cost-focused firm spends 40% on transactional systems. Compared to the average firm that spends 14% on strategic systems, a cost-focused firm spends 5% on strategic systems. So we can see that a cost-focused firm spends more than the average firm on transactional systems, but spends less than the average firm on infrastructure and strategic systems. Now let's compare the average firm with the firm that is trying to balance cost and agility. So the average firm is very similar to the firm that is trying to balance cost and agility. So the average firm's investment is very similar to the investment of a firm that is trying to balance cost and agility. Now let's compare the average firm with the firm that is focused on agility. Here we can see that an agility focused firm, the firm that is looking to innovate, differentiate, that firm on average spends 10 to 20% higher than the industry average firm. So compared to the average firm in the industry, the firm that competes on the basis of agility, differentiation, innovation spends 10 to 20% higher. Now let's look at how the individual elements of an agility focused firm differ from the average firm. Here we can see that the key difference is that the agility focused firm invests more on strategic systems. So here the difference looks small, but if we consider the fact that an agility focused firm can spend 20% more than the average firm, we can see that the agility focused firm spends significantly more than the average firm on strategic systems. Now we are going to look at what is the process a firm can follow to manage its IT investment portfolio. So a firm can follow a 3-step process to manage its IT investment portfolio. The first step is a simple inventory of all IT projects. That is, identify all significant IT investments, both current and planned. what is this project about? So describe the project. What strategic goal or high level business objective does this project align with or contribute to? What are the expected resource requirements for this project? What are its costs, milestones, and timeline? And what is the financial justification for this project? So the first step in IT portfolio management is to do an inventory of all the projects. The second step is ranking and selection of projects. So we have all these projects. How should you rank and select the projects? Typically we use a criteria that has 4 elements. The 4 elements are alignment with corporate strategy. So which corporate goal or strategy the project contributes to? The second criteria we use is technical architecture. How will this project integrate with other projects that are planned and other projects that have already been executed? So a new IT project will work with the IT investment portfolio. The new project will work alongside the IT investment portfolio of the firm. So what is the compatibility of this project with the IT investment portfolio of the firm? So technical architecture deals with, will this project integrate with the other IT assets? The third element of the evaluation is technology risk. So what are the technical, organizational, and market risks associated with this project? So technology risk is, we evaluate the technology risk of the project, whereas architecture risk is how this project will work with other projects. Finally, we look at regulatory compliance, that is, does this project conform with all the rules and regulations all IT projects have to comply with? So the second step in the IT portfolio management process is ranking and selection of projects, and we said that we use 4 criteria to rank and select projects. The last step in the information technology portfolio management process is managing the portfolio. The world is changing. The firm's competitors' strategies may change. The firm itself may change its strategy. So our portfolio, our IT investment portfolio also must evolve with the world. So manage change as business priorities change. So we continuously review the entire portfolio to ensure that the projects remain aligned with the organization. This means that we are willing to restructure, delay, or even terminate projects based on their performance and changing business requirements. Thank you.